Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the phone call. We're right at the top of the hour, so I'm just going to give folks another minute or two to get dialed in, and then we'll get started. Hi, everyone. Sorry for the delay. We're going to get started here in just one more second.
Hello? Oh, boy.
Yeah, hi, Denny. We'll get started in just 1 second.
Okay. Now I'm in.
Let's just go ahead. Hi, everyone. And again, welcome to our summer quarterly partner networking call. We're really glad that all of y'all could join us. We have a jam-packed agenda this time. So we're gonna try to move things along. Again, just a few housekeeping things. First of all, for you all that are using Zoom online, there is a chat function. Feel free to ask any questions, shoot me comments in. Hope Foss, who many of you work with and know and love, is monitoring that, so she'll be on there responding. There's also a Q&A section you're welcome to use as well, and we'll be keeping an eye on that too. Okay, well, joining us today, initially we have a few updates from our Hospice Action Network team. We are then going to get going. We're very excited to have Denny Meyer here from the American Veterans for Equal Rights to give an overview. We're then going to have some information on event planning from our partners and some of their local collaborations. And then, as always, we're very happy to have Dr. Scott Shreve, the National Director of Hospice and Palliative Care, here joining us for some updates and answer any questions from the VA. I also wanted to just take a second. We're very excited again to be hosting another summer intern. Many of you may be working with her or hear from her. So Joy, just want you to say hi and tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Joy and I'm a summer intern here. I am currently studying at Southern Adventist University. It's a small school right outside of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And my major is archaeology with minors in chemistry, biblical languages, and political economy. I hope to become a lawyer in the future and also continue going on archaeological digs in the Middle East.
All right, well, thanks, Joy. So again, some of you may be hearing from her or working with her this summer, so just wanted to welcome her on. All right, so without further ado, we have Lauren Drew for some updates from the HAN team.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again for letting me drop in on your call and just update you a little bit with what's going on. So we are actually in the middle, the smack dab middle, it is Wednesday, of Virtual Hill Week. That is an event we do every year where we enable you all to be advocates from your home and your offices. You don't have to come to DC, you don't have to take meetings, but we have an advocate module all set up for you to send emails, Facebook posts, letters to the editor, make phone calls to your members of Congress, and empower you to take some action for the hospice and palliative care community. So most of you are on my email list. You should have gotten my emails over the last couple days with the information and the access link to access that advocate module. Like I said, we're in the middle of the week. It goes all the way through Friday. So if you could just find 5-10 minutes to make a phone call to your member of Congress. We are asking people to talk mostly about the Rural Access to Hospice Act, which does affect both rural health clinics and federally qualified health centers. So even if you're not in a quote unquote rural area, it's quite possible that some of your patients, friends, family members, or community is served by a federally qualified health center or a rural health center. So please look into that. We're going to have the link available in Catherine's follow-up email to you. You can also catch it in the latest edition of NHPCO News Brief. And if you're on the Hospice Action Network mailing list, you've gotten several emails from me lately. So please make some time to do that. We really appreciate it. Really only does take 5 or 10 minutes, and you'd be surprised how much attention it can help bring to our cause. And secondly, really quick, I want to let you know about the overarching campaign we have going on, the My Hospice campaign. Hopefully some of you have seen the videos and letters to the editor that we've been putting out, really trying to raise awareness, not only in the wider community, but also among policymakers about the good work hospice does and why we need to ensure its protection and expansion going forward as we're facing any kind of budget cuts, changes to health policy. This campaign is really about educating people about what hospice is, why every American is entitled to those services, and really sharing the good work you do. So if you're interested at all in participating in the My Hospice campaign, we are collecting stories, pictures, whatever good work you're doing. We'd love to hear about what you're doing with the We Honor Veterans program, anything like that. You can check out myhospicecampaign.org, which has all kinds of information about what we're doing. And this is going to probably be a multi-year initiative, so you can find out how to get involved. If you're a leader at your organization, how you can get your entire organization involved. There's going to be a lot going on. So check out myhospicecampaign.org and check the follow-up email after this call for a link to our advocacy module so you all can participate in Virtual Hill Day. And I'll kick it back to Catherine. I know you got a full agenda.
All right, thanks, Lauren. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to her or to veterans, and we'll be happy to send anything her way. Okay, well, without further ado, let's get the call going. Again, first we have Denny Meyer joining us from the American Veterans for Equal Rights Organization. So, you know, in honor of Pride Month, we found this very fitting and are very happy that he's taking the time to join us and give us an overview of the organization, as well as some benefits info that you may not be aware of. All right, Denny, can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I am Denny Meyer. I am the National Public Affairs Officer of American Veterans for Equal Rights, which is the national LGBT veteran service organization advocating for the rights and benefits of LGBT veterans. And I'm also the National Veterans Affairs Officer. I'm also the Public Affairs and Veterans Affairs Officer for Transgender American Veterans Association. No need to explain what that is. And I am 71 years old. I served 10 years in the Navy and in the Army Reserve and left honorably as a Sergeant First Class. So I have a hell of a lot of experience. I'm on the phone only, so I can't see anything online that you're typing because my internet service is down. So any questions, ask them verbally at the end. Being a senior citizen and multiply disabled and on the verge of needing hospice myself, I'm very outspoken about the needs. And this would be regarding the needs of LGBT veterans. And I've been unfortunately well aware that many services looking to serve everybody, as it were, will say and announce on their websites, we also serve LGBT veterans. But unfortunately, it takes more than just saying that with a smile. It requires a great deal of work and understanding of the needs of LGBT veterans. You have to have a staff that is trained to respect people for who they are, be they male, female, black, white, Native American, or gay, etc., etc. For LGBT veterans, it also has other complications in relating to other patients or guests, and that you have housing issues. If you're housing young veterans, they have no problem sharing space with LGBT people because they were raised in the current era and they respect everybody. When you're dealing with older people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and grumpy old veterans, there's going to be a lot of hostility. So you have to have education, and you have to have just considering that certain people are just not going to get along. and it has to be dealt with. When it comes to transgender veterans, then you have a housing issue in particular, and have to examine the needs of each particular person or what they need. Giving somebody a single individual room is not always a solution, because they might be offended by being left out. But including them, that requires a great deal of careful work. Beyond that, we have the needs of LGBT veterans. If you are already working with veterans and you're familiar with dealing with PTSD and the trauma of combat stress and so on, gay people have additional PTSD, especially older gay people my age. So if they're veterans, they are likely to have suffered PTSD from combat, like everybody else. And they're also likely to have PTSD from having served 4 to 10 years and having had to hide who they were. Today you can serve openly. But when I served, which is like most older veterans, you had to keep it a dark secret or you would be murdered. And if you weren't murdered, you'd be interrogated and terrorized for months and then kicked out dishonorably in disgrace. So the stress of hiding who you are and being hypervigilant creates its own PTSD. And I can tell you, I served for 10 years listening every single day to homophobic death threats and jokes casually used, with everybody laughing crudely, and you could not say anything. You had to remain silent or actually laugh crudely along with everybody else, at least they look at you. So it has its own PTSD. Many older veterans, in addition, after having served.
We just got on. So thank you so much.
After having served, had a lover, a partner in life, who from the late 1980s through much of the 1990s may have died of AIDS. After that, living veteran took care of him for years. And losing somebody that you took care of, who is the person you love, of course, is its own PTSD. And so this is just an overview. Of course, there are many, many other issues. But it's just to give you an idea of, it's more than just, oh, you're gay, well, that's okay. You have to really know our background. And I'll be happy to work with anybody who needs more help on that beyond this phone call. Our national website is aber.us. The transgender website is transveteran.org. And I don't know if we're giving out phone numbers, but if we are, I'll give out mine. So that's just a very rough and brief overview. There's much more, as you can imagine. And now I'll open up to questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Denny, for that. We're sharing our screen right now. We have the Aber website up. Again, if people have questions, they're welcome to call you, welcome to go to the website, welcome to reach out to us, and we'll put folks in touch. I was going to ask you if there were, one common misconception or one takeaway you'd really want our partners who are serving veterans at the end of life to know. What do you think that would be?
Well, I guess that would be we're not interchangeable with everybody else. And so I started out saying it's not enough to say, well, that's okay. You can be whatever you want. We'll welcome you here. We're not interchangeable. We're not like everybody else. And that's not unique. It's just like a black person saying, I'm not like everybody else. Each group has its own particular needs and its own particular suffering and discrimination, and it has to be taken into account and worked on very seriously. We're not simply interchangeable. I mean, look, I've gone to psychotherapy with VA therapists who are PhD psychologists. They don't know a damn thing about gay people, but they assume, well, I'm a PhD psychologist. I can work with anybody. wrong. So just keep that in mind. We're not just interchangeable, and nor is anybody else. Next.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you so much for that, and thank you again for joining us. So
My pleasure.
there aren't any questions at this time. I know people are continuing to use the chat box and send things in. If anything comes up, again, we will be asking you, and folks, if you have any questions, first, go to the website. You know, there's a lot of really good information, aver.us. I have it up on the screen share right now, and we'll include that in the post-call resources. There is a lot of great information out there and stuff that you may not be aware of. And again, any questions, reach out to us, give Denny a call. As he said, he's welcome to answer things at all times. So again, thank you, Denny, and we'll be in touch if anyone has any. Oh, wait, one question. Sorry, just came in.
So a question did just come in. It says, how would you recommend beginning a supportive conversation with an LGBTQ vet in hospice?
Well, before you accept them in hospice, you have to have a program and an understanding of our needs. Because if I mean, you want to have had that conversation before you admit him or her, because you really have to know, you know, the housing issues and everything else. But basically, respecting that person for who they are, and not jumping to conclusions or assumptions or anything else. Each individual has their needs. And then there are the group or tribal needs. And that's where you need to have a lot of preparation and education. You know, we have for transgender service, we have something called Transgender 101. It's quite an education, simply how to address somebody respectfully. So I could go on for hours about that.
Okay, well, that's actually super helpful. That was going to be my next question. So just a basic, you know, folks want their staff to have, you know, basic 101 training. Where should they go, or where can they get that?
For seniors, there's actually a national organization called SAGE, SAGE.org. And I mean, they're focused on serving LGBT seniors, and, you know, not veterans necessarily, but seniors. And their website and their offices have training programs specifically about serving LGBT seniors. So that might be helpful as well.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And I know you were going to try to stay on the line a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. I know we do actually need to get moving on to our next speaker, but again, at the end of the call, we'll have some time for open discussion and questions. If you are able to stay on, we'd greatly appreciate it, as I know, you know, folks are starting to chime in with questions. But again, thank you for that. And we'll have those websites for resources up for folks after the call. Okay, so next, I am very happy to introduce, I know a lot of our partners often have questions about event planning, you know, event planning 101, how do we reach out to organizations in our area and collaborate with them? How do we invite our members of Congress, as Lauren waves her little arms over there? So we actually have a wonderful collaboration from one of our partners who held a very successful brunch and learn. So we're very happy to be joining us. Barbara Hopkins, who is the volunteer coordinator with Comprehensive Hospice and Palliative Care. Also joining her is Lisa Villante, the outreach specialist from Wounded Warrior Project, as well as Gane Medoyer. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. She is the program manager for Vets Community Connections. So let's see. Sorry guys, I'm unmuting you. Can you test out your microphones?
I can hear. Can you hear me? This is Janae.
Yes.
Yep, we can hear you.
This is Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
All right. Sounds like you can hear me.
Yeah.
I think Barbara's on as well. Barbara, can you hear us? Okay. Well, Lisa, did you want to start then?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
With Barbara.
I can see Barbara, and I cannot hear her. Well, I'd be happy to go ahead and start. So several months ago, we received here in Wounded Warrior Project Phoenix regional offices, we received a contact from Janae Matoyer at Vets Community Connections, introducing us to Barbara Hopkins with Comprehensive. And the introduction was, kind of a, hey, how could we maybe explore working together? My teammates and I discussed the opportunity and weren't totally sure exactly what to do with it. We have a Wounded Warrior Project has a very specific set of veterans that we serve. We specifically serve those who became wounded, injured, or ill on or after September 11th, 2001. And so we had a lot of questions, I guess is the best thing to say. So we set up a lunch with Barbara to ask those questions and to get those answers and for her to learn a little bit about us and to explore different ways that we might be able to work together. We started out with kind of questions that helped us understand each other's goals and objectives. And there were probably even many questions left unasked because we were still in that exploratory phase where we didn't know what we didn't know yet. But we learned enough to decide on a plan. And our plan was to provide an opportunity for the veterans that Wounded Warrior Project serves in the Phoenix area to enjoy a brunch together and get some information from Comprehensive about what their volunteer program looks like and how volunteering with Comprehensive might be beneficial to them and their lives and help them meet whatever goals they might have about being active in their communities. We set a date. We had a nice private meeting room. We offered a very nice lunch and invited multiple people to come in and provide some information about these things that we've just discussed. We learned some things along the way, but this was a great opportunity to engage each other in the process of helping identify additional opportunities for volunteerism amongst veterans, many of whom attended this lunch and learn or brunch and learn as the case may be, were veterans who are permanently and totally disabled as rated by the VA. And so are not employed, are not looking for employment, but are still looking for meaningful engagements in the community. So we had a pretty lengthy discussion. They were able to ask lots of questions. We also hosted afterwards, after Comprehensive left the brunch and learn, we had an opportunity to discuss privately with our veterans how they felt about the opportunity. And we received, honestly, very mixed feedback. So one of the things that we hadn't addressed before we engaged in this was what equals a good outcome. It turns out maybe for Wounded Warrior Project, for us a good outcome was having those, I think it was 9 or 10 veterans attend that brunch. For Barbara, and she can talk to you more about what the ultimate outcomes have been. For Barbara, her ideal outcome was something a little different. It was about translating that interest into meaningful volunteerism. And I'll let Barbara take care of that part of the conversation. But I wanted to quickly just give some short tips on if you wanted to reach out to a member of Wounded Warrior Project, or I should say a staff member of Wounded Warrior Project, or another veterans organization, some ideas to keep in mind. You know, every organization has their own rules about how they market to their members, how they announce different activities and events and programs and things. So I would ask questions about what that looks like and what their process will be. You know, for us, it's about a month-long process, and that was important to keep in mind as we were planning the date. I would ask them, as they do their marketing, to perhaps consider keeping the focus of the marketing on the opportunity to connect veteran to veteran in this act of service. Don't hide the fact that it's hospice, but emphasize how volunteers will have the opportunity to connect with a fellow veteran, oftentimes, in the case of Wounded Warrior Project, to connect with a veteran from a previous era. You know, something that we were able to use in our description was, at a previous event, a volunteer event at a national park, we were doing a work day. We were really engaged in our work. We had been for, you know, maybe an hour or so, so we weren't completely tuckered out yet. And all of a sudden, I looked around me, and all of my veterans who were attending that event had disappeared. So I decided to go investigate and see, where did my veterans go? We're not done yet. Well, a World War II veteran had entered the park, and he was sporting his cap that, you know, said World War II veteran and the name of the ship he had served on, and all of this fun stuff. And all of my veterans who were attending this other event had stopped work to go engage this gentleman in conversation and to thank him for his service and all of the things that they would like to discuss together. We were able to use that story to our advantage in describing the opportunity to connect veteran to veteran through comprehensive. So keep that focus on connection. Don't hide that it's hospice, but keep the focus on connection and the opportunity to provide that service to a fellow veteran of a previous era. I would recommend setting goals in advance. And those goals can still be somewhat ambiguous. You know, for us, our goals were to educate, to spark interest, and to set a follow-up plan. We didn't have to set the follow-up plan in advance. Our goal was to determine what action to take following the brunch, if it were warranted. In our case, it was warranted. Have reasonable expectations for follow-through. You know, like I mentioned before, for us, a successful event was having those 9 or 10 veterans in that brunch and learn. We had about a 25% follow-through rate. I didn't understand that for Barbara, that was a fantastic success. So, and I'll let Barbara talk about that more. But have a reasonable expectation. If you have, you know, 9 or 10, 15 people show up to brunch, understand that you probably won't have that many people actually follow through. I would also mention that during the brunch and learn, as you present the information and the opportunity, I would keep it very We Honor Vets centric. I would place the emphasis again on that connection veteran to veteran. That was a lesson that we learned from our event, was the feedback we got from the veterans who attended was that they felt a little overwhelmed by the technicalities of information about hospice and how hospice works and the ins and outs of hospice itself. So I would recommend keeping it We Honor Veterans program specific. And then I would also recommend considering the idea of having just the volunteer coordinator and a previous veteran volunteer be the presenters. It's wonderful to have you know, a good panel discussion if you have multiple volunteers who can share their experiences. That was, again, was a little bit of feedback we received, was our veterans felt a little overwhelmed by the number of people presenting and the range of topics that they presented on. And then finally, my last piece of advice, if you were to try and set up something like this, would be to have in advance your dates set for the mandatory training that you might have. Have those dates in advance. Allow interested veterans to sign up for those training dates before they leave that day, and have some alternate dates in mind about how you might be able to serve interested veterans if your 2 set dates or 1 set date or whatever you decide on aren't going to work for them for whatever reason. In terms of setting up the event, you have a lot of creativity and availability for different ways to do that. But I'd like to pass the microphone over to Barbara and let her talk about, from Comprehensive side, how to go about setting up this event and what it was like for us to work together.
I don't know if Barbara made it online. I know she was online before. I just don't know if it's coming through or if she's having some technical difficulties. This is Janae. So I'll just piggyback on what Lisa just said about the volunteer aspect and when it's time to present, having the volunteer coordinator and perhaps a previous volunteer be a part of the event instead of having a number of staff presenting. And I'll just tell you from my end, as a former comprehensive hospice and palliative care volunteer, that's how I got started and how I met Barbara. And I was volunteering with her for about a year and a half, and then I got a full-time position with Vets Community Connections. She became a resource through my organization so that I could refer people directly to her who wanted volunteer opportunities with veterans. And after several referrals, she expressed that, hey, we'd like to really ramp up the number of volunteers we have for veteran clients, and it would be great if they were veteran volunteers, at which point I introduced her to Wounded Warrior Project, some of my contacts over there, which is kind of how it got started. I wasn't able to participate in the Lunch and Learn event to be a part of it and share my experience, but coming from the standpoint of one of the volunteers, I think it's really important to share what those experiences are. And I had some great stories, if I had participated, to share with the veterans for whom I volunteered. So, Barbara, did you ever make it on? Well, at any rate, Catherine, thank you.
Oh, of course, yeah. Sorry, we can see Barbara, but we can't hear her, unfortunately. Oh, hello, we hear you.
Press star 6.
Did you try star 6, Barbara?
I am unmuted.
Yay! Welcome.
So Jenny, I totally feel your pain about the computer glitches this morning. I think really when it comes to collaboration, it's all about developing relationships with your volunteers and utilizing who they are and the connections that they have, but also who they know in the community. Janae was, being that she was a hospice volunteer, really understood the needs, and being able to connect us with Wounded Warrior Project was amazing. And I just want to touch on some of the things that Lisa said, and that was when this was all set up, everyone in our office was just super excited because we all love our veterans and we want to give them the greatest care. So everyone wanted to participate. Our CEO, our medical director, who's our owner, and also our social worker. And they all had their own agenda of what they wanted to present. I do think it was overwhelming. So I think, like in the future, it's going to be important to kind of really look at your audience and what's going on. We also didn't talk ahead of time as a group about what our goals was. And as Lisa said, we each had our own individual goals. So when we met afterwards, kind of in a postmortem kind of thing, we were able to, talk about that. I thought it was extremely successful because everybody showed up, everybody had questions, and we did get some volunteers. And Lisa's take on it was a little bit different. So establishing the goals ahead of time. I still think it was a really successful thing, and we're talking about continuing this in the future, having additional trainings so we can continue this relationship. My dad is 96, and at some point he's going to be coming in hospice, but he was in World War II as the Navy vet on a PT boat. And I know there's going to be veterans who are going to be flocking to his side to be a volunteer. And all of our veteran volunteers are so wonderful with wanting to connect with our veterans. So I think that's it. I'm glad I was able to unmute and join everyone.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Barbara. I know we did have one question come in regarding veteran volunteers. So we know that oftentimes a lot of veteran volunteers that are coming in may not have the time to go through the full volunteer hospice training. Can you maybe go into a little bit about what veterans can do as far as, you know, honoring their fellow veterans without going through the entire hospice training and how they can be involved?
Sure. I think part of it was, usually I do an 8-hour training and then give about 8 hours of video for people to watch to complete the training. With the Wounded Warrior Project, we did 2 4-day trainings. And so things can be broken up time-wise in order to meet the needs. Yeah, and 12 hours is a lot, but it's very important stuff. Lisa, do you have something on that?
You know, it's a great question because the ongoing, or I shouldn't say the ongoing, but the onboarding training was a little bit of a deterrent for several of our veterans. They weren't sure they wanted to make the commitment to the training. But it's kind of, I mean, we don't have any say in how that's adaptive. If you can find a way to adapt the training so that they get everything that they need in a more consolidated period of time, you know, the 2 4-hour sessions seem to work for those who actually did follow through and have become volunteers. But we did lose at least one, I think maybe 2, by the second day of training, where, you know, one person said they couldn't get out of work. I think there was somebody else who just didn't show up. So understand you may even still have some attrition during the training period. And if you have a way to make that training a little more accessible, for lack of a better word, I would encourage you to look carefully at what you can do to make it more likely that the veterans will engage in the training and complete the training.
Yeah, it's important because we have to follow the guidelines for volunteer training, but they can be done in modules. So that if a person does module 1 now and they can do module 3 next week, they can pick up module 2 at some other time, but have those as ongoing availabilities.
Gotcha. Okay, so we did have one more question regarding training.
Yeah, so did you need to provide transportation for injured veteran volunteers to brunch or any trainings or for visiting patients at all?
Our volunteers, the ones that we have from Wounded Warrior Project, all have their own transportation, and I believe everybody was able to get there on their own. Yeah, Lisa?
As far as I am aware, I think we did have one bus rider, but he provided his own transportation.
Yeah. And we did bring cowboy cookies as well.
Yeah. We did have really delicious cowboy cookies.
Always a great incentive.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us and for this wonderful information. Again, if anyone, you know, thinks of any other questions that come up or maybe want some further information, feel free to reach out to us. You know, we'll be happy to pass your information on and get you some answers and help planning your next event as well. Again, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, Catherine.
Sure. So next, sort of in line with event planning, the team here from We Honor Veterans and NHPCO was actually lucky enough to attend our neighbors Gilchrist Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day event. This was their inaugural event. It was their first year planning and pulling this off, and I have to say we were extremely grateful to be a part of it. So joining us today, we do have Diane Cincilio with Gilchrist, who is integral in planning this again. And if we do have time, I wanted to show just a minute or two of their video, but I did want to make sure to give her some time to speak and give everyone some good information.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you for inviting me to this conference. So just real briefly, Gilchrist did their inaugural event, as Catherine said, March 30th, and it really, it came from a previous hospice that I worked at where we were doing salutes for Vietnam veterans, and many of them did not want to be honored, and many of them, you know, carried a lot of guilt, shame. And so we did, in the previous group, approach Senator Astle. He's a state senator, and he proposed a bill, and it was Governor Hogan's first bill he signed into law. So this is our way of honoring March 30th as Welcome Home Day for the state of Maryland. And our focus was Central Maryland, but folks came from all over Maryland. And so this one was our first event, and as everybody said, it's really about partnerships. And we quickly developed partnerships with Aberdeen Proving Ground, with their military, with the Younger Marines, with the local VVA, with some of the veterans organizations, and together we formed a task force where we started planning back in October. And this March 30th, we had over 700 people attend. And I'm happy to share the template with anybody. But we had the founder of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, Jan Scruggs, was one of our speakers. George Forrest was a retired colonel who served in the Battle of Drang. He was our MC, which is the book We Were Soldiers Once. So he was a great MC. We had Major General Singh of the National Guard, and we had Command Sergeant Major Forbes, who was retired from Fort Meade, did an inspirational speech. So, and at the end, it culminated with a salute led by Command Sergeant Major T of Aberdeen Proving Grounds, as well as involved with his men and women of Aberdeen, but there were some folks from Fort Meade, and of course the Young Marines. We got great feedback. Some people said it was the best event they've ever been to. We're already starting planning for next year. And as I said, I'm happy to share the template, our implementation plan, our program, our script, anything that you all need to do something like this. And it's really about serving all Vietnam veterans, honoring them, but also gets the word out about hospice and palliative. And I think it destigmatizes the words, and people seem to be more open and receptive, and that's our hope too, and that they learn about the services, and when they need it, they won't wait, because we know how important it is to get those services and to get it, you know, sooner rather than later.
Well, thank you so much for that, Diane. Again, you know, we're extremely grateful for you to come on and give some tips, and again, share that template. We'll be happy to share that with partners. As I mentioned, Gilchrist did put together a wonderful video just sort of summarizing their event. It's about 7 minutes long, so I'm not going to play the entire thing, but I did want to show just a minute or two to sort of give you all a taste. We really are encouraging our partners. You know, we're trying to build up Vietnam veterans resources, and these Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day events are just, we really can't convey how important they are and how much it means to the veterans in your community. So please, if you need any help with planning or organizing, let us know, and we really do want to support you in any way we can. But again, though, I did want to share just a minute. Okay.
lot of the guys that are in this room, this will be the first time that anybody has said anything about service or duty or honor or whatever.
Boy, if I knew that, I would love to go to Arribas. But the thing is, It's not a war story, it's a love story about what men will sacrifice for each other in times of crisis. This is what encourages me about our nation. And they said, Sergeant Baker, we never knew. We never knew the Vietnam veterans were called baby killers, that they were spit upon, that they were not welcomed back into the United States of America. We never got the and that stuck with me. That transformed my life. You said you've been on 6 peacekeeping missions and 4 combat operations. He said, I more than guarantee you that you have some issues. And he said, I'm talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. That these young service men and women, they will be the ones that will carry the torch forward. I will speak and advocate for every Vietnam veteran that has left the safety of their homes, and I will tell the story. Not on my watch.
Wow. Well, again, I just wanted to share a bit of that. We will have the link up in our post-call notes. Again, it's about 7.5 minutes long. So we're very grateful to Gilchrist for creating that and sharing that with us as well. Anything else that you wanted to add, Diane?
No, just hope that people will consider doing something that's incredibly special. And again, I'm happy to share all the information that we have so that you could do your own Welcome Home event.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks,
yeah, and
Kathy.
again, if you have any questions, reach out to us and we'll be sure to put you in contact. Okay, well, thanks again for joining us, Diane. Okay, well, coming up next, we have our faithful Dr. Scott Shreve with some VA updates and a couple of questions for folks and things that he'd like to hear from you. You with us, Scott?
Am I okay?
There you are.
Okay. Hey, thank you. I really appreciate being able to be on the call and want to remind you of some things that I believe you may already know, have heard in the press, as well as share some things that I don't believe you've heard in the press, but I think you should. And the topic heading right now is suicide prevention, and clearly that has been a priority for the Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm going to give you a few figures, and I know it's hard. This has been such a packed call, and boy, there've just been a lot of good information shared today. But you know, suicide is so prevalent in our society. You know, about 38,000 deaths per year, and when you kind of boil that down to about 100 Americans per day, and then it ends up being about 20 veterans per day committing suicide. The fact that Dr. Shulkin had presented when he was the secretary that I thought was probably the most memorable fact was that really only about 6 of those 20 veterans committing suicide each day are getting care through the VA healthcare system. And this is such an alignment, if you will, with our We Honor Veterans program that, 97% of veterans that die this year will die outside of a VA inpatient facility. And that's really, for many of them, under your care. And for those 14 veterans committing suicide, you may be providing care to a number of them. So I really wanted to let people know, and we're going to, I say Catherine Kemp is really the one doing it, but put up on the We Honor Veterans website just some resources about suicide prevention. It's really understudied from my perspective at end of life, and I'm going to share with you some really tantalizing and interesting research about the impact of palliative care and its association with reduced suicides. But I just wanted to remind you that VA has really taken this on. If you believe the Department of Veterans Affairs could help in any way, and I'll just give one concrete example. Our pharmacy, our pharmacists across the country are getting very familiar with distributing gun locks. And boy, I bet it's thousands, if not millions, of gun locks that the Department of Veterans Affairs has disseminated in order to protect those at risk. There's also a document that we'll put up on the website about the SAVE program, and there's a community kind of instruction manual there. The SAVE is the acronym for know the signs of suicidality, ask questions about it, seek to validate that veteran's experience and what they're going through, and encourage them to get treatment. And that kind of the other E at the end of SAVE is really expedite help. And if there's one resource I can leave today, it would be the Veterans Crisis Line, which I'm very hopeful that all of you have at ready hand whenever you need it. The 1-800-273-TALK, and that's 1-800-273-8255, and then press 1. And you'll get directly 24/7, 365 days out of the year, directly to a trained counselor there to assist the veteran. There were so many things just in today's presentation about the power of veteran-to-veteran volunteers. I believe in reducing hopelessness, in making those connections, those social connections when perhaps veterans feel isolated because of serious illness. I'm just so grateful for the work you do, and I really believe it's having an impact. And the slogan that the VA has been sharing widely in social media is it takes the courage and strength of a warrior to ask for help. And I think that pretty much says it all. And I would just ask that you do whatever you can to help the warriors we're caring for to be able to ask for that help. So I think the really exciting part is an abstract presentation by a VA researcher that was presented to the American Thoracic Society that looked at the suicide rate amongst people with advanced lung cancers. And Dr. Donald Sullivan looked over a 6-year period, 2007-2013, and found out when you look at all the suicides that were completed, that if the patient had a palliative care consult, there was approximately an 80% reduction in the outcome of suicide. So a palliative care consult was associated with a much reduced likelihood of suicide. we really need to do a lot more research about this, but I suspect that all of us are caring for patients and veterans with advanced illness and that are at risk for the hopelessness and social isolation and other risk factors that can be associated with high suicide rates. But this is wonderful for us to now beginning really to unravel what it is about palliative care that may be helpful in reducing suicide rates. So you're going to hear more about that. If anyone has any questions, I don't consider myself an expert on veteran suicidality, but I just let you know it's something that we're all getting more expertise in and really want to be a part of the solution here. I'm going to, I think I'll just shift gears, but I welcome people putting up questions in the chat box, and I'll try to address them as we're going along. Really, there was a perfect kind of lead-in to my next topic, and I'm shifting gears over to the Vietnam-era veteran. And I didn't get good audio on the video presentation. I want to watch that, but that Welcome Home Day in Maryland just sounds awesome. And that is exactly what Congress has asked our program office to do. And what I mean by that is Congress has inserted into a bill requiring our office to respond back to them about what are we doing to identify the unique challenges faced by Vietnam era veterans at end of life. And the request even goes further and states, please partner with community programs to figure out what are some of the strong and best practices. And I think the video and all of you have a pretty good understanding of how Vietnam era veterans really, it was not a ticker tape parade when they returned home like it was for World War II. I think one of the most telling facts in my mind was if you were in Vietnam, in country, as they say, you were in combat an average of 240 days in a given year. And I'm not belittling what happened in World War II, but the average days in combat was 40 days in combat over a 4-year period for the World War II veterans. It just gives you an idea of some of the nuances to the intensity and the difference in the experiences of Vietnam era veterans. So I don't know if Catherine wants to get on the line. I'm not sure the best mechanism, but I'd like to ask all of you if you would share in an email, or I don't know whether posting to the We Honor Veterans website would be the best way, but we're seeking to learn about what you believe are some of the best practices specific to caring for Vietnam era veterans. I didn't know, Catherine, do you have any thoughts about what you think might be the best way to share them with us? And we'll accumulate them, and then I think we're going to try to post a compendium of all those practices on the We Honor Veterans website.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, just to the folks on this call, I really can't stress enough how important this is that we receive these. We really want to compile the most resources that we can. I would say the best thing to do would be just to send them to me directly. My email address is kkemp, that's K-K-E, M as in Mary, P as in Peter, @nhpco.org, and I'll put that up in the chat box. If for some reason you just don't get that down, send it into the veterans inbox. Really, I can't stress enough how important these are. So feel free to send along anything you have, any stories, anything that you'd like to share. Just go ahead and send along, and I'll be sure to compile those for Dr. Shreve.
That's awesome, Catherine. I thank you, and I thank everybody on the call. We're going to be doing some focus groups with VA teams that care for Vietnam era veterans at end of life, and going to do listening and note-taking and compiling a compendium with VA people. If Catherine believes it's appropriate, after we get some submissions from you, perhaps a focus group meeting to talk about it further and maybe help us prioritize or categorize some of the submissions. I welcome participating in that as well. And I agree with Catherine. I really believe this is this is a demographic imperative. Over the next 10 years, all of us are going to be dealing with a greater number of Vietnam-era veterans approaching end of life. So I thank you very much, and that's really all I had to share for today, and I'm open for any questions.
Okay, well, it looks like we had a few people that did raise their hands. I'm going to go ahead and go to them first. Actually, we did have one question from Meredith regarding our call for submissions. She's saying, can you please clarify again the ask? I understand it's related to Vietnam vets, but are you looking for best practices? So maybe just a little clarification on what specifically you would like, Scott.
Oh, sure. And I think Catherine and I were being a little bit vague purposely, in the sense that I'm not sure what all of the best practices look like. So, for example, I'm confident that veteran to veteran, veteran volunteer to veteran has great power, and I suspect that will be part of one of the strong practices. But there may be some other kind of not so obvious connections. I'll just share one that I've observed at our facility. We have Rolling Thunder that comes through. I didn't realize the power of 100 or 200 motorcycles coming to your VA, stopping and kind of socializing, if you will, with the veterans. And our Vietnam-era veterans from our hospice unit couldn't wait to get out there. So we're really open to whatever you think improves the quality of life for Vietnam-era veterans approaching end of life, and things that kind of, if you were looking for a high-performing facility to deliver, or organization to deliver, that you'd want that to be a part of that organization's process. And I welcome Catherine if you have things to add.
No, I was just going to second that, our sort of purposeful vagueness. It really is anything that you have. You know, if you've taken some of our PowerPoints and maybe tweaked them and adapted them to caring for Vietnam veterans, any stories you have, you know, as Dr. Shreve just shared the bit about Rolling Thunder, pretty much anything that you have, we can't have too much information. So again, just feel free to send along anything that you'd like to share with us. Okay, well, again, any questions for Dr. Shreve, or if you wanted to share something, you know, recently that's happened, or we're going to open things up for questions as well. I see that Brenda Dunn, you had raised your hand, so I'm unmuting you right now. Brenda, are you there? Okay, let's try one more. I see Stephanie Salerno. I'm sorry, Salerno, I'm not pronouncing that correctly. I've just unmuted you as well. Okay. Cynthia with Gilchrist, are you able to speak? Have you hit *6?
Put those in the Q&A section.
Okay, well, let's see. So Cynthia, it looks like, just put her questions in the Q&A session, so we'll just go there. Let's see. So one question is, do you speak with Vietnam-era veterans before end of life for suggestions?
I would welcome that, and kind of true to the mission of We Honor Veterans, just to emphasize the respectful inquiry part. And I I guess the way I've summarized it in my mind, you know, about 5 years ago when We Honor Veterans started, we were really all kind of had this dream of every hospice program across the country asking the question, are you a veteran? And now we've kind of evolved and we've grown to the point where we want that question to be, are you a veteran? And let's say the veteran responds, you know, yes, I am. I served in Vietnam. And now, you know, a little bit like today's earlier presentation, you know, thank you for your service, welcome home. And then I think asking the veteran, you know, what is important, that what can we do for you? What can we learn from you? I think in a respectful way would be wonderful. I'm confident, just as an earlier speaker said, you know, everybody is unique and has their own unique experience. And I think there are some commonalities across the Vietnam era of service, but I'm confident there's a lot of uniqueness that we need to learn about along the way. So I would just emphasize the respectful inquiry.
All right, thanks, Scott.
And then I guess, okay, about choice. A few partners ask what's happening with choice and how that will affect them. Do you want me to make a editorial on the choice program?
That would be much appreciated. Our sort of answer here has been stay tuned and we'll keep you updated. So if there is anything that you'd like to share or willing to share, I know partners are just concerned about how it's going to affect them and, you know, the veterans that they're serving. So
yeah, I think, yeah, I'm gonna share some thoughts, but I want to let you know these are boy, here I am representing the Department of Veterans Affairs, but I'm going to be direct, but I don't want anyone to say that this is the final word. But here is what I believe the vision for how we want to move forward, and the vision is for VA to have greater flexibility in the use of these choice funds. And the VA Mission Act, which was recently signed by President Trump, really does provide some increased flexibility and funding through the choice mechanism. It will also open up opportunities for VA to work with community programs in the delivery of community care in a way that doesn't require a full contract. And if any of you have worked with the federal system of contracting, it can be burdensome and overbearing in its regulations. And what is coming forward quickly is going to be known as these veteran community agreements. And it's along the lines of a provider agreement, you know, a much abbreviated contract with all of the, without a lot of the, I'll call it the legalese of, you know, 20 to 30 to 50 pages that only attorneys really understand what it says. So I really believe we're moving forward in that for improving access to hospice with VA paid funding. So I think this is in large part good news for improving access to hospice for enrolled veterans. More to come, and I promise to give more specifics to this group on a next partnering call. I think the Department of Veterans Affairs has to figure out exactly how it's going to implement the VA Mission Act. If you understand, legislation gets passed, and then it has to be determined as far as regulation and putting it into place, and that's the process we're in right now.
Well, thanks for that, Scott. Definitely much appreciated, and we will continue to stay tuned.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
So, yeah, in line with sort of VA happenings, I'm not sure if you wanted to mention, I think that July 11th is the deadline for the VA Life Sustaining Treatment Initiative.
Yes.
Did you maybe want to mention something about that?
I'd be happy to. And this is, you know, I couldn't be more proud to work in the Department of Veterans Affairs. That when Catherine says July 11th is the deadline, what that really means is that's the 18-month mark when the Life Sustaining Treatment Decisions Initiative was released by the Department of Veterans Affairs. So picture how many healthcare organizations or systems across the country mandate that every physician, if in the VA system, if they see a patient who has a life expectancy of a year or two, that they are mandated to have a goals of care conversation. And this is not a check the box goals of care conversation. This is, you will receive 4 hours of training in how to have this discussion, and you will go through a fairly detailed documentation template that pretty much forces you to ask some insightful questions with the veteran or surrogate about what their goals are. So July 11th is when everyone has to have that up and running. Not that every physician across VA has been trained, but they're all moving in that direction, and it's installed on the computers, and people are really taking it and running. And I'll just let you know that our program office has been asked to look in a methodical way. Do these earlier goals of care conversations, are they associated with earlier palliative care consults and earlier referral to hospice? I suspect that is true, but we're going to let you know and find out in real world experience if that's true or not. So yes, the Life Sustaining Treatment Initiative, I really think VA is at the forefront of healthcare systems in making this happen nationwide.
All right, thank you for that, Scott. So one question that did just come in, or one comment, I suppose, is that is really needed for all physicians, including VA physicians, and a couple people in agreement there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And just so people understand, when you, in the VA system, in our electronic medical record, so when you have this conversation with a veteran, and by the way, social workers and nurses are being trained, we learned that implementing goals of care conversations is a team sport. It works a whole lot better when the whole care team is involved in the process. Some veterans, kind of open up, if you will, to their social worker, to their nurse, but we have the provider who does the, at minimum, kind of the bringing it all together and then documenting that this fairly comprehensive conversation has taken place. What's really neat about our electronic medical record is it automatically populates an order set. So you hear from the veteran what the goals are, and then it automatically puts in what's called durable orders. So these orders stay in place until the veteran or surrogate changes their goals in some way. So it's a one-click access. You can turn on your computer, go to that veteran's file, and in one click you can find out they're allergic to penicillin, and by the way, here's their goals of care that they want. So I really think VA has thought this through in a phenomenally effective way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, we folks sometimes forget just how massive the VA system is and how much it really takes to implement something, especially like that.
Yeah, this has been huge.
My God. Okay, we did have just a few questions come in, and the first one, I am happy to reach out to Denny and also our friends Scott and Moira with the Benefits Administration. A question came in, is it possible for someone that has been dishonorably discharged from the U.S. military due to their sexual orientation, have that discharge amended to an honorable discharge?
Well, this is Scott, and I think the short answer to that is possibly. And there are groups, and I'm sorry, I'm happy to do some investigation to find out, but there are some groups that are going back. I shouldn't say going back. They're assisting veterans who were dishonorably discharged to go get that overturned, if you will. And there's many more reasons than sexual orientation. You can imagine other reasons that people were discharged, and I've heard of it in the PTSD population of, exposed to a traumatic event, came back, couldn't adapt to whatever military requirements or responsibilities they had, were dishonorably discharged when it may actually have been related to their PTSD that they were dishonorably discharged. And we didn't realize the kind of the overriding and enduring effects of that. So I will get a resource for that. And I am confident that that there's some assistance in that area to look at it. And I would not take the dishonorable discharge as etched in stone. I'm not saying everyone can get reversed, but I think for some people, I think it's worth investigating.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a possibility.
I will get more on that we can post there, Kathy.
Okay, thank you. Kevin Cross, I see you raised your hand. I unmuted you. Let's give this a shot. You can try talking, otherwise you might need to hit *6. But I have unmuted you.
Boy, I love that train sound.
Okay, just a few other comments that did come in. One from Charlene Hope. She said, one very successful thing that they have seen with Vietnam vets is the presentation of quilts of valor. Yeah, I can't say how many comments we get from partners who are working with their quilts of valor, collaborators in their area. I know we had someone on from Quilts of Valor from the national office come on and give some updates. And so if you'd like to go back and hear more about that, it was in a previous partner networking call, but I would definitely say reach out to them if you're not already working with them. They're an incredible resource. Oh, hello, Don Timmons. He has a question. Don Timmons is a wonderful partner that we work very closely with in North Carolina. And I cannot begin to tell you how many events they have going on. I'm convinced that he doesn't sleep. He is a veteran himself, and he is stating veterans coffees are a great way to connect veterans to each other and to benefits and resources that they have earned, especially hospice care. And we, of course, will completely second that. And I know Don is someone who has done this extremely successfully, and they not only have coffees in their area, but they have events from every source, ranging specifically from Vietnam veterans to women's focused veterans appreciation events. So Don, thank you for joining us. And if anyone has any questions or wants some more resources from him, please reach out to me and I'll happily, pass anything along to him, because again, he is just a wealth of information as far as planning community events and coffees and the like. Okay, one more. Sandy Doolittle asked, a veteran I interviewed this week stated, don't say thank you for your service due to shame of what might have happened. Instead, say your service is appreciated. Have you heard this? Scott, I'm,
yeah.
Looking at you. Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. I definitely have heard this comment here. I just put it into perspective, and I shared that on our inpatient hospice unit, when patients arrive, we stop everything we're doing. We kind of all get up and go over to the veteran, and we do say thank you for your service. And it's really sad when when the Vietnam era veteran, which is probably the most common experience for me anyway, and they say, you're the first person that has ever thanked me for my service. And I think being careful about the language is very important. And I think Sandy's comments there are something to certainly consider. I was trying to bring up the language in the Vietnam War 50th anniversary commemorative while we're talking. And I think the language that they use, and I'm paraphrasing because I can't find it quick enough here, but it's along the lines of a grateful nation appreciates you for your service. And I think again, getting back to a sensitivity here, I think most people know when there's a genuine sharing of appreciation versus a rote reciting of a phrase. So I think if you got that pushback from someone, I certainly think it's okay to revise the language to what you think is appropriate. I guess the other one that jumps out at me just quickly is probably avoid use of the term heroes. And I think many of us know that. The remark that I get, I don't use the word heroes lightly. I've heard that heroes refers to the people that didn't make it home, those who died in service. So that one I would probably try to avoid universally, but I think being careful about how you say thankful and express your gratitude, I think is something to be sensitive to.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And I know that's something that we hear actually a lot from partners. my colleague Hope and I were actually fortunate enough to go to a comedy showcase that was put on by veterans, and there was a particular veteran there who had served, I think, 2 tours in Afghanistan, and he sort of, made light of it and made a joke of it, but he said, it's really uncomfortable, and he's never really sure what to say or how to respond when people thank him for their service, because he said, if he says, oh, well, of course, then he sounds like sort of a pompous man, but if he doesn't say anything, then he sounds unappreciative. So I think it is, from what our partners have said, just best to gauge it on the patient that you are working with, the patient or veteran that you are working with. And I see Jamie.
I was just going to say, just going to add to your comment there, Catherine, that on the Vietnam War 50th commemorative site, and this is, the 50th commemorative pins, the specific language they use is "a grateful nation thanks and honors you." That's what's embossed on the back. I would like to think that Vietnam era veterans were part of the process of developing those pins. So I guess I would think that is a reasonable starting place, but still with the sensitivity that you emphasized.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, I just wanted to add to Jamie Scott posted a comment. I bring this up regularly. Not everyone wants to be thanked, and some of us actively do not wish to be thanked by those who haven't been through military service. One reason is it is something easy for them to say rather than something thoughtfully shared. And I think that that's just an important comment to keep in mind as well. You repeat something enough and it just sort of automatically rolls off your tongue and it can lose its meaning. But I do know that many of our partners and folks that are thanking veterans for their service, their hearts are in the right places. And I know that that they're doing it for the right reasons. It's more about the intention, but that is definitely something to keep in mind. Okay, well, we're right at the end of the call. Melanie McNeil, she says she was at the previous hospice she worked with. Another team member took the lead in managing We Honor Veterans. Now it's your current hospice. You've been asked to take the lead. Hope and I will be happy to reach out to you and get you up to speed, answer any questions that you may have, and welcome to We Honor Veterans. But yeah, we are at the top of the hour. Again, want to thank everyone for joining us, especially our panelists. Scott, I don't know if you have any final parting words.
Oh, just thank you for all you do, and I really just appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this. And boy, Vietnam era veterans are going to be really a part of all of our lives for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, definitely. And again, I thank anyone in advance for anything you want to send along as far as, caring for Vietnam veterans. And I do want to let you all know, our next partner networking call will be in September. Before then, though, we're looking at the end of July to have another We Honor Veterans webinar. We're lucky enough, I'm working right now with Deborah Grassman to present a webinar specifically focused on caring for Vietnam veterans at the end of life. So definitely stay tuned for that. And other than that, our latest newsletter is out, so please be sure to check that out. And I know most of you are aware of our video. That is another good resource for all of you to share. And again, we'll put all of the website links and information that Scott shared on suicide prevention in the post-call resources, and a recording of this will be up on the We Honor Veterans website if you'd like to rewatch something or share it with your staff that may not have been able to make it. So again, thank you all for your help and your work and your continued support. We really are grateful, and please feel free to reach out if you need anything. And with that, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you.